Well, it's been a hot minute since King Gizzard put out a new album, so I think it's about time that they release another one. Jeez, these guys just don't stop. They've already released one this year. Oh well, on to the next one, I suppose. Butterfly 3000 by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. So, Australian band that is King Gizzard. I've already talked pretty at length of King Giz, and I love King Giz. I was introduced to them back in like 2018 during their gap year where they didn't put out anything from 2017, which they put out 5 albums. So the thing that I love about King Giz is that they're not afraid of trying something completely different. Each of their albums, outside of a select few, are completely different from the rest of the other, like the rest of their discography. They do have like a collection of albums that kind of create the same soundscapes. Like you have the Microtonal trilogy, you have the Nonagon trilogy, but everything else is really an island to themselves, outside of maybe like their first 3 or 4 albums that are very similar in style. And that's the one thing that I just love about this band. If you get bored about one of their style or expressions, just wait an album and it will be completely different. And that's what we have here. So this one is coming off of their 2 microtonal albums of KG and LW. Both of those were really fun in testing the microtones of Microtonal Banana. They were okay. They were okay. I didn't run out to pick up those albums. I didn't really feel all that excited about them. There were a few moments on those albums that I really enjoyed, but overall, it was just kind of forgettable. I think there was like 1 or 2 tracks over the course of those 2 albums that really got me excited. That can't be said about Butterfly 3000. I freaking love this album. I really do. I love the style that they've decided to really hone in on this one is this psychedelic synthwave style of music influencing the Eastern expressions. I guess still taking influences of those microtones, but I love how mellow and soothing this is. It does take a little bit of that style that we found from sketches of East Brunswick or the Paper Mache Dream Balloon, where it's a lot more somber, a lot more impressionistic, a lot more pastel in feels, but this is much more run through the lens of a synthesizer. It is very synth-led, and I love that. Like right from the beginning with the first track of Yours, it starts off with this very heavenly, it almost feels like a picking on a harp, but it's being produced from a synth coming into Yours, and it's just allowing you to drift off into space. And right from that first track, bleeding into the second track of Shanghai, you realize that all these tracks bleed right into one another that provide over about 40 minutes worth of this beautiful music. Like Shanghai really does pick up the torch exactly where Yours ends off. And I love that it continues this very pleasant, very floating, airless style of music. It feels like you're a cloud just kind of bouncing along the air currents of the upper atmosphere. And I do love that they're infusing the different expressions and styles from like the Eastern style of music, especially when the track is called Shanghai. And then it just feels so light and fluffy, and I love how it's just this very pleasant style of music. And again, it's that passing that baton, like the transition from Shanghai to Dreams feels like it's the same track. The only real difference is that slow transition where Dreams is a little bit more bopping. It's a little bit more tangible. It feels much more like a celebration. Like I love that midsection where it's that I only want to wake up in a dream. Like it's so flowing, it's so fresh, and I love how the transition from Dreams into Blue Morpho is a little bit more grating. There's a little bit more of a darkness being put in there. It almost feels like, a cloud is moving behind the sun. We're getting just a little bit more of an edge on it. And even still, those synths are still dripping with that flow, that funky, fresh flow. Even though it's a little bit more in the minor key on this one, it never really feels daunting. It never feels harsh or hard. It just feels very soothing and very And then we come to the halfway mark of Interior People, and this is one of the few tracks where it's the guitar work that's allowing the music to bleed through. It doesn't feel like a traditional guitar work either. It's still being put through this lens that is the Butterfly 3000, and I love that ebb and flow of this. It's still very So the second half of this album starts off with Catching Smoke, and this one is a much more tangible. It's definitely a switch and a pivot from the first half, where the first half was very light, very somber. This one is a lot more abrasive. Like it hits you right over the head with this almost alarm clock sound of this din 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 din. And I really enjoy that it wakes you up a little bit, because you could be lulled very easily into a sleep. And then again, the transitions are just so well done when we come from Catchy Smoke into 202 Killer Year. And this one actually reminds me a little bit of like Popcorn, where it's got this boom 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 boom. What I will say is the next track of Black Hot Soup reminds me of A Puppet History, where they talk about hot set soot, and the ending song on that one has this talking goose, which may be an ostrich, but a mummified goose singing about hot chet soot.
Hot chet soot, committed to memory, because you see, regrettably, she happens to be dead, and we can help her out enormously, particularly spiritually, if every now and then-ish we could toss a kindly thought to she who nearly became history, not be a...
And this like very grooving, like very psychedelic atmosphere of the song. I feel like the cadence of both fit extremely well. And I do love Black Hot Soup in this one, in the presentation. I love that there's still a little bit of this like overlay of darkness underneath the surface. It's not blatant and it's not in the forefront, but it allows the listener to still just kind of groove off and just... again, the whole album is very breath of fresh air. And then we come to maybe my favorite track off the album, which is Ya Love. I love how it starts off very abrasive in context of the album, and then it just goes into this very mellow and very grooving ya love, ya love, ya love. And I love those singing styles and the overlay of harmonizations within the band. It brings everything in towards this beautiful harmonization of these very tangible melodies in this very floating and incorporeal musical stylings. But then we come into the final track, the ending track of Butterfly 3000. And honestly, this is both my other favorite track as well as probably my biggest gripe of this album. This track is almost 3 minutes long, and I wish it was pushed into the like 5, 6, 7 minute mark, because it ends on my favorite moment, where it's this syncopated beat overlaid on the synth, where it's this boom, 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 boom. I'm like, yes, this is brilliant. This is amazing. And I know King Gizzard is one of those bands that loves to experiment and push the music forward, and they won't let this just fizzle out and die. But that's the end. It doesn't do anything with it. There's a couple seconds of this boom, 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 boom. And I was really excited and like looking forward to whatever it was that they were going to do with this, and they ended up doing nothing with it. And I was just so about it, because I love how it does end off, and I love how it ends off on this beautiful synth style wave of music. I felt like they were going to do something really, really special, like they did with Intrasport on KG, but instead they didn't do anything with it. So... womp. Anyway, that's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's latest album of Butterfly 3000. I think it's their best release since Fishing for Fishies. I love this album. I will be returning to it throughout the entirety of the summer. I have a very strong feeling that this is going to be the sound of the summer for me, and I cannot recommend this album more. The boys prove that, you know, if they feel like they're getting into a rut, just wait a couple albums and they will rejuvenize themselves even further. This is one that I absolutely love with my whole heart. I think this is a top, like an A-tier album for me for King Giz, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, it gets the note seal of approval. This is a run, don't walk to go and listen to it. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's it for Butterfly 3000 from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. And if you like what you see and you want to help support me, consider donating to my Patreon. I've left the link down below. Even $1 a month goes quite a long ways. You get your name at the end credits, and you get your name shouted out on all of my live streams, which I'm doing a pretty good job of keeping up to. I've got a number of them that have been uploaded. So yeah, and if you want to see more of this, more of my pretty face, you can head on over to my podcast where you won't be able to see it, but you'll be able to hear my voice wherever podcasts are found, quid pro quo. But if you do want to see the Moneymaker, you can head on over to YouTube under the quid pro quo banner. That's where I've uploaded all the visuals of it. And my role-playing game channel, where I talk a lot about role-playing games. And I think that's about it. That's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are obviously the best. And until next time, notes out.